Hi you guys, so today we're going to talk about rational expressions. So remember, rational expressions are just fractions. Okay, we're going to talk about in this part of the video about the beginning stuff. So we're going to talk about simplifying them, multiplying and dividing. Okay, and then the next part of the video we'll talk about adding and subtracting. Okay, so to simplify, okay, you want to factor everything. Okay, and you want to do that as much as possible. Okay, then you're going to cancel common factors. Okay. All right, so let's look at an example of that. Okay, so when you have something like this where there's only one term, there's really nothing to factor, and you're just going to simplify using the exponent rules. Okay, so you can see the reason we don't need to factor, right? There's only one term, there's no plus or minus here. Okay, so we're just going to simplify. Okay, so 14 over 7 is 2. Okay, c squared over c squared is 1, and d over d cubed is 1 over d squared. Okay, so that would be our final answer. Okay, we're canceling this to give us 2, we're canceling those, and then we're canceling one of these with that one. Okay, so if you do have more than one term, okay, it's important to remember you can't cancel these two, right? You have to actually factor this. So the common factor here would be 2. Okay, and now you can cancel this 2 with this one. Okay, so that would give us our final answer, 2x plus 3 over 3. Okay, and you still can't cancel those 3's. All right, let's look at some more simplifies. Okay, so here we're going to factor in the numerator. So they have a common factor of 2a squared. Okay, so that leaves me with 3a from the first term and minus 2 from the second term. Okay, and now I can cancel the common factors here. So I have a common factor of 2, and I have a common factor of a. So that leaves me with a times 3a minus 2 over 2. Okay, and you're welcome to just leave your answer in this format. Certainly you could multiply this back out, but you don't really need to do that. You can leave your answer like this. Okay. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do here is factor out the 6 from the numerator. Okay. Okay, and now because I actually want my y's to be in the front so that I can cancel this, I'm going to reorder my terms. Okay, and now I want to factor this, but I'm going to factor the negative out first. Okay, and now I can finally finish factoring the numerator because this is the difference of squares. Okay, and I'm going to write the denominator out in factored form just so we can see what's happening. right? You don't have to do that, but you can. Okay, so I can see this common factor of y minus 1 that's going to cancel, and I'll end up with negative 6 times y plus 1 over y minus 1. Okay, and again, you can leave it like this. You don't have to redistribute. Let's look at another one like that. Okay, so we're going to factor the numerator by factoring out, well, first I'm just going to reorder the terms, like this. Okay, and now you can see why I should factor out negative 2 instead of just 2. So I'm going to do that. Okay, and I'm going to factor the denominator. Now see, this is the difference of cubes. So I'm going to use the difference of cubes formula that we talked about earlier in the semester. Okay, here's my common factor. And there's my final answer. Okay, one more like this. Okay, now I have to factor each of these. Okay, so remember this is the time that you use guess and check factoring because you don't have a 1 here in the front. Okay, so I'm going to start with a denominator because I think that one's going to be easier. Okay, so the only thing that multiplies to 2x squared is 2x and x. Okay, and then I'm going to have 5. So I can either put 1 and 5 or 5 and 1. So I think it's going to be 1 and 5. Okay, minus and plus. And I'm actually going to use this to help me factor the numerator. Okay, so I think some of these terms are going to cancel, and because I'm guessing anyway, I might as well guess that this is 2x and 3x because I'm hoping that these two are going to cancel. Okay, now the only thing that multiplies to negative 1 is 1 and 1, right? So I'm going to put 1s. Okay, then again, I'm hoping these are going to cancel, so I'm going to put minus and plus, and then I'm just going to check. So 2x minus 3x is negative x. Perfect. Okay, so if you're having a hard time factoring something, remember you're hoping they're going to cancel, so if you're guessing and checking, that's a good guess. Okay, cancel these. And get that as my final answer. Okay, that's really all there is to simplification. Okay, so the only thing that can be more difficult is how difficult the factoring is. So if the factoring is difficult, then the simplifying can be, but there's nothing else that can happen. Okay, now let's talk about multiplication. Okay, so the steps are very similar, so we're going to start by factor everything. Okay, then we're going to cancel common factors. Okay, and then the last thing we're going to do is multiply the way you multiply fractions, which is straight across. Okay, so this isn't too different from simplification because you can see the first two steps are essentially the same. So let's look at an example. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is factor everything. So in the numerator here, I can factor out a 5. Okay, there's really nothing to factor down here. Okay, same in the numerator here, there's not really anything to factor. And in this denominator, I can factor out a 2. That looks like 110, but it's supposed to just be 10. Okay. All right. So now I'm going to cancel my common factors. You can see there's x plus 5s. Okay. But there's also this 2 and this 1, this 2 and that one. Okay. And then this x and this x. Okay. So what's left? Well, in the numerator, it looks like I have a 5. And in the denominator, there's nothing left. Everything is canceled. So it's just 1. Okay, so my final reduced answer would just be 5. Let's look at some more of these. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is factor everything. Okay, so I'm looking for things that multiply to -3 and add to +2, so that's going to be +3 and -1. Okay, and then I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm looking for things that multiply to 2 and add to 3, so that will be 2 and 1. Sorry, that scared me. Okay, and then we're going to factor this. They have a common factor of x. And down here we know that this is the difference of squares. Okay, and now we're going to look for common factors. So we have x minus 1 with x minus 1, x plus 2 with x plus 2. Okay, now you can't cancel these x plus 1s because they're not going to end up 1 on the top and 1 on the bottom, right? They're both going to end up on the bottom, so you can't cancel them. Okay, so it looks like that's all we can factor, or that's all we can cancel out, so we'll multiply. So in the numerator I still have x and x plus 3. And in the denominator, I have x plus 1 and x plus 1. Okay. All right. Let's look at one more of these. All right, so we're going to factor everything. So in the numerator here, I'm going to have 2x and x. Okay, and then if I'm thinking about where my factors can go, I could do 1 and 6. I can't do 6 and 1 because 2 and 6 have a common factor. Similarly, I could do 3 and 2, but I can't do 2 and 3 because 2 and 2 would have a common factor. So I'm going to try 3 and 2 first. Okay, so this would be -4 plus 3, which is -1. That's what we want. Okay, now the denominator is a little bit easier because it's just 1, so this has to be +1 and +1. So this would be 3 plus 1 is 4. That works. Okay, now I want this to be 7, so I'm going to put the 2 opposite here. Okay, so 6 plus 1 is 7. Okay, and then here 2x and x. Okay, and again, I can't put a 6 here, and I also can't put a 2 there. Okay, so maybe I'll try, these are both going to be pluses, so maybe I'll try putting a 2 here and a 3 here. So that would be 4, 5, 6, 7. That works. Okay, so let's look at what common factors we have. Well, we have 2x plus 3, 2x plus 3. Okay, I have x plus 2 and x plus 2. I have 3x plus 1, 3x plus 1. Okay, it looks like that's it. So I have x minus 2 left in the numerator and x plus 1 left in the denominator. All right. So a lot like the simplifying, the multiplications, the difficulty of multiplication is largely based on how hard it is to factor. Okay. So let's talk about division. Okay. Now division just has one additional step, and I'm going to highly recommend that you do this additional step first. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is change to multiplying by the reciprocal. Okay, now the reason you want to do that first is because if you don't do it first, a lot of times people end up canceling things that don't really cancel, or they don't see anything that cancels when you should. Okay, so it just makes sense to do this one first. Then you're going to do the same steps as multiplication. You're going to factor everything. Okay, you're going to cancel common factors. Okay, and you're going to multiply straight across. All right, let's see an example. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is change to multiplying by the reciprocal. Okay, and now we're going to do everything else. So we're going to factor. Okay, we're going to cancel our common factors, which here is going to be x minus 2, x minus 2, y, and y. Okay, so what's left in the numerator, we just have 4, and in the denominator, it looks like we have 3 times 6, or 18. Oops, I guess we could have factored more, huh? Cancel a 2 out of there, cancel a 2 out of there. So we'd have 2 in the numerator and 9 in the denominator. Okay, let's look at a little bit harder example. Okay, so first we're going to change to multiplying by the reciprocal. Okay, then we're going to factor. Okay, and now we're going to look for common factors. So I have x minus 3, x minus 3, x plus 2, x plus 2, x plus 5, x plus 5. Okay, and all I'm left with is x plus 1 in the numerator, okay, and x minus 2 in the denominator. All right, let's do one more of these. Oh, let's do this one. Okay. Now, the key to get started on this one is when you have a fraction and something that's not a fraction, remember what you do. The thing that's not a fraction, you can always put it over 1 to turn it into a fraction. And this is no exception. Okay, so we'll do that. And we'll change to multiplying by the reciprocal. Okay, now we're going to factor everything. Okay, and we'll look for our common factors. So it looks like we only have one common factor and it's x minus 1. So we're just going to multiply straight across. We'll have x squared times x minus 4. Okay, and in the denominator we'll have 1 times x plus 1. Okay, so that's what you do if you have something that's like a whole number, right, or something that doesn't have a fraction. You can always put it over 1 to turn it into a fraction. Okay, so I hope this guy refresh your guys' memory about working with rational expressions. The next video we'll talk about adding and subtracting, which is a little trickier, and I'll see you guys soon.